Hello, and welcome to the Fighting Moose Podcast. I'm your host and narrator, Jason Hendrickson. This is a podcast where I retell stories, some fictional and some historical, that can be enjoyed by people of all ages. Today, we have a triple feature with 2 poems written by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow and one by Johann Ludwig Uhland. These poems come from the book The Complete Poetical Works of Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, and these poems are The Black Knight, The Phantom Ship, and Snow-flakes. Hence why I called this episode The Black Phantom Snow-flakes. To tell you the truth, I am not very familiar with Mr. Longfellow. I have read a few of his poems, with today's included in that list, but prior to starting this podcast, I think I can honestly say I didn't know who he was, nor did I read anything written by him. Anyway, his name has come up in the last 2 books I have read, so I'm thinking that he must have been popular at the beginning of the 20th century, but lost that popularity during the latter years of the 1900s. I think I may have to see if there's a biography about Mr. Longfellow and read that if I can find one. Before I forget, I'd like to thank you for your patronage to the podcast. August 2020 was the best month so far in regards to the number of downloads, and I can't thank you enough. You guys are the best listeners ever. Now, let's turn to today's story. I hope you enjoy. Let's begin.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
The Black Knight. 'Twas the Pentecost, the feast of gladness, when woods and fields put off all sadness. Thus began the king and spake, so from the halls of ancient Hofburg's walls a luxuriant spring shall break. Drums and trumpets echo loudly, wave the crimson banners proudly. From balcony the king looked on, in the play of spears fell all the cavaliers before the monarch's stalwart son. To the barrier of the fight rode at last a sable knight. Sir Knight, your name and scutcheon say. Should I speak it here, ye would stand aghast with fear. I am a prince of mighty sway. When he rode into the lists, the arch of heaven grew black with mists, and the castle 'gan to rock. At the first blow fell the youth from saddle bow, hardly rises from the shock. Pipe and viol call the dances, torchlight through the high halls glances, waves a mighty shadow in, with manner bland doth ask the maiden's hand, doth with her the dance begin. It danced in sable iron sark, danced a measure weird and dark, coldly clasped her limbs around, from breast and hair doth fall from her the fair, flowerets faded to the ground. To the sumptuous banquet came every knight and every dame, 'twixt son and daughter all distraught, with mournful mind the ancient king reclined, gazed at them in silent thought. Pale the children both did look, but the guest a beaker took. Gold and wine will make you whole, the children drank, gave many a courteous thank. Oh, that draught was very cool. Each the father's breast embraces, son and daughter and their faces, colorless grow utterly, whichever way looks the fear-struck father gray, he beholds his children die. Woe, the blessed children both, takest thou in the joy of youth. Take me to the joyless father, spake the grim guest, from his hollow cavernous breast, roses in the spring I gather. The Phantom Ship. In Mather's Magnalia Christi, of the old colonial time may be found in prose the legend that is here set down in rhyme. A ship sailed from New Haven, and the keen and frosty airs that filled her sails at parting were heavy with good men's prayers. O Lord, if it be thy pleasure, thus prayed the old divine, to bury our friends in the ocean, take them, for they are thine. But Master Lamberton muttered, and under his breath said he, the ship is so crank and walty, I fear our grave she will be. And the ships that came from England, when the winter months were gone, brought no tidings of this vessel, nor of Master Lamberton. This put the people to praying that the Lord would let them hear what in his great wisdom he had done with friends so dear. And at last their prayers were answered. It was in the month of June, an hour before the sunset of a windy afternoon, when steadily steering landward a ship was seen below, and they knew it was Lamberton Master who sailed so long ago. On she came with a cloud of canvas, right against the wind that blew, until the eye could distinguish the faces of the crew. Then fell her straining topmasts, hanging tangled in the shrouds, and her sails were loosened and lifted, and blown away like clouds. And the masts, with all their rigging, fell slowly one by one, and the hulk dilated and vanished as a sea mist in the sun. And the people who saw this marvel, each said unto his friend, that this was the mold of their vessel, and thus her tragic end. And the pastor of the village gave thanks to God in prayer, that to quiet their troubled spirits he had sent this ship of air. Snow-flakes. Out of the bosom of the air, out of the cold folds of her garments shaken, over the woodlands brown and bare, over the harvest fields forsaken, silent and soft and slow, descends the snow. Even as our cloudly fancies take suddenly shape in some divine expression, even as the troubled heart doth make in the white countenance confession, the troubled sky reveals the grief it feels. This is the poem of the air, slowly in silent syllables recorded. This is the secret of despair, long in its cloudy bosom hoarded, now whispered and revealed to wood and field.
Listen, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Fighting Moose Podcast. Please join us next time as we read another exciting story. Today's music was provided by the artist Analog by Nature, and the audio clips were provided from NASA. For more information to download and or listen to audio or materials from all our recordings, or to contact us, please visit www.thefightingmoose.com, or you can follow the links in the show notes. If you enjoy the podcast, please leave us a review wherever you get your podcast or on iTunes, and tell a friend. Thank you for your patronage, and as always, try and do a random act of kindness every day.
Mission complete, Houston. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and has come to a final stop.